me torn, has pushed me down, has killed my peace. But now's the time for sweet release. I'm going all in, going all the way, till freedom shines within me. I'm going all in, giving into divine, till freedom's mine. I'm going all in. There's always been a clearer flow, the higher choice that lets me know, that fills my well, opens my eyes. These are all the reasons why I'm going all in, going all the way, till freedom shines within me. I'm going all in, giving into divine, till freedom's mine. Self-doubt and loneliness have no place in my wilderness. I fit into my skin just fine. So before I run out of time, I'm going all in, going all the way, till freedom shines within me. I'm going all in, giving into divine, till freedom's mine. I'm going all in, going all the way, till freedom shines within me. I'm going all in, giving into divine, till freedom's mine. I'm going all in. I'm going all
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know, if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down. Jumping from cliffs so high, trusting our wings to fly. Sometimes we're crashing down, but we get up and start from the ground. And I really wanna know, if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling
positive. You're gonna see this through. Like a boomerang, you come back every time you throw. Not afraid to take crazy chances or stare into the unknown. 'Cause you're a strong girl. You got this. I feel the fight in you. Strong girl, positive. You're gonna see this through. Like a straight up miracle. You're a force to behold. In the face of losing the race, you still go for the goal. You're such a strong girl. You got this. I feel the fight in you. Strong girl, positive. You're gonna see this through. You're my strong girl. You got this. I feel the fight in you. Strong girl, positive. You're gonna see this through. When in doubt, just reach out. We'll be here. Have no fear. Such a strong girl. You got this. I feel the fight in you. Strong girl, positive. You're gonna see this through. Always been a strong girl. You got this. I feel the fight in you. Strong girl, positive. You're gonna see this through. Strong girl. Strong girl.
Life is a winding road. No telling driving through days and nights. Won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down. Jumping from cliffs so high, trusting our wings to fly. Sometimes we're crashing down, but we get up and start from the ground. And I really wanna know if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down.
Good morning, everyone. Reverend Derek here, and welcome to the Love is Greater Than Fear Spiritual Center. Super excited to be back with you guys this Sunday. We had a talk last week, but I had some audio problem, and you guys did not get to hear my talk on Muhammad, which we'll do again next Sunday. Bear with me 1 second. Having some computer problems this morning while I try to get my slides. Hold on 1 second. For anyone who may be new, this is the Love is Greater Than Fear Spiritual Center. You can get more information about us over at loveisgreaterthanfear.org. Bear with me just 1 quick second. Actually, while that loads, we're just going to go ahead and do our morning prayer. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to go ahead and bow your head, take a moment, and let's turn within. So, dear God, this morning, this beautiful Sunday morning, we invite you into our minds. We invite you into our hearts. We know that you are already here, but we also know how important that invitation is to experiencing your light of understanding this morning. So we invite that light of spiritual understanding into our minds, into our hearts. We ask that you be with us this morning, that you guide our conversation, that you fill us with grace, you fill us with joy. Dear God, I ask that you bless everyone who is watching now, who will join us later, and everyone who will watch a replay, knowing that they will get whatever they came looking for today. Whatever their miracle might be, dear God, let's guide this conversation in a way that miracles can be experienced for everyone joining us this morning. Furthermore, dear God, I bless not only the people in the Love is Greater Than Fear community, but I bless everyone gathering this morning to worship the God of their understanding, be it at a church, a temple, a mosque, wherever it is. Whatever their holy day, dear God, we bless and we honor them, knowing that your power, your presence, your love is right here, right now for everyone. And we bless our cities, our states, we bless our country, we bless the world, knowing that we are all on the same spiritual path. All 7 billion plus of us are on the same journey from fear to love. And we say together, amen. So thank you for joining us this morning. We will be continuing our conversation on spiritual masters with a talk on the metaphysics of Moses. Really excited for this conversation today. Before we jump into that, just a quick bit for anybody who's new about the Love is Greater Than Fear Spiritual Center. We're a virtual spiritual center that was just founded last year. We get together every Sunday to have a spiritual talk and spiritual meditation based on universal spiritual principles. We happen to be exploring Moses today, but we will talk about anything that has universal spiritual principles that are true. Our vision is to create a spiritual place for personal and planetary awakening. Our mission is to support awakening by living and teaching universal spiritual principles of love, peace, and joy. We do this by offering classes, workshops, and counseling that promotes the healing and transformation necessary for personal and planetary awakening. Who is welcome? Everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter your gender, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your religious background, or even if you have no religious background, none of that matters, right? We are all children of God, and we believe that all of God's children deserve a life of peace, love, freedom, and creative expression. We also believe in the dismantling of the thought system of fear that would hinder any person's purpose on earth. We believe, well, I can't see my last slide. We believe in love and equality for all. Now, we reject the idea that there is only one path to God. We celebrate every life. We believe we are stronger together. We believe prayer and meditation can transform any life. And we believe that love is greater than fear. Join me this morning in saying, give me 1 second, guys. I'm having computer issues. Okay. Join me this morning in saying our spiritual declaration together. I surrender this day to God that he may lead me to deeper peace, greater love, and fuller life expression. I surrender all my fears and desires to him. I ask that he show me the path from fear to love. Amen. Just a couple quick announcements. If you are a student of A Course in Miracles, I encourage you to join our weekly discussion group. We're doing these every Tuesdays at 6. They started last Tuesday. We had a great conversation together. Doesn't matter if you're new to A Course in Miracles or you've been at it a long time, spiritual principles don't change. The further along you get on your spiritual path, the principles are still exactly the same. So no matter where you are on that path, take some time, join us. All right. So this morning, here in a couple of minutes, we're going to start our talk about Moses, the metaphysics of Moses. I'm really excited to talk about him. I hadn't really explored him in a while, so I spent a lot of this week going back and revisiting him. Now, before we dive into the talk, I do have a song I'm going to play for you guys this morning. I want to play the song for you because I feel that the talks are a little bit richer when we have some music. I wish we were meeting in person to hear some great music together, but we're not yet. So I have a song I'm going to play for you guys from legendary 90s folk pop singer Jewel. She always is singing about spirituality. I'm going to see her live tonight here in Phoenix, so I'm super excited. And I am going to play one of her songs for us this morning. Give me one quick second. All right, guys. So I'm having some audio problems this morning. My software must have changed how they do some things. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If you can let me know in the chat, if you're down in the comments section, if you can hear me, that would be great. We're going to go ahead, and this morning, we are talking about the metaphysics of Moses. I'm super excited for this conversation for so many reasons. Moses is a great person for us to explore. He is the most important prophet in Judaism. He's a very important prophet in Christianity and in Islam as well. So all three of these religions, plus other religions that are part of the Abrahamic faith, all follow Moses. And it's such a great thing for us to be exploring. Give me one quick second. So sorry, guys, just having some audio problems this morning. So we're going to dive into Moses this morning. Now, the past couple of weeks, we've talked about Jesus. We've got to talk about Buddha. We've got to talk about Muhammad coming up. Why are we exploring these spiritual masters? First, I think it's fun. I think it's really fun to explore a lot of these people. And on top of that, it's interesting. And I said this the past couple weeks. You can take these stories of these spiritual masters, and if you want them to just be like A Course in Miracles might call them like toys, if you just want them to be a story that's, that you treat like a toy and don't really think about too deeply, like the story of Jesus, you might revisit it every Christmas, but you might not really think about it. And that's fine. If you do that, then all the power they will have is the power of a toy. But if you explore these stories and see them from a deeper, more metaphysical perspective, then you see how powerful these stories actually can be. So, give me 1 second. So let's talk about Moses this morning. Now, what's interesting is once a year in Judaism, they get together and they talk about, during Passover, they explore the story of Moses. Now, the story never changes, right? It's the same story they've been telling for thousands of years. It never changes. But every time we hear this story, and at least for me, every time I learn a new story or revisit an old story, something else happens in my mind. And it's really important to me, especially as a minister, to be able to take something from these stories that I can then apply to my life. And for me, that's true whether I'm watching like Superman, a superhero related thing, or whether I'm reading about Jesus or Moses, Muhammad, Harry Potter, whatever it might be. It's really important to me that when I spend that much time going into a story, that I walk away with a better understanding of myself and of other people. And that happens for really, really good stories, because the idea of a Moses, the idea of a Jesus, the idea of a Superman didn't necessarily originate with those characters, but these archetypes go back thousands upon thousands of years. So let's talk about Moses this morning. So a couple of things, let's see. So Moses was born into Hebrew slavery. His mother and father were both Egyptian slaves. So we're going back to approximately 1571 in ancient Egypt. That's when historians have decided that's the time that they think that either Moses lived or a Moses-like character really did exist. They're kind of on the fence about whether or not he was historically a true person, but most historians agree that if Moses didn't exist, that there was some type of person who lived, who was like Moses and did many of these great things and was responsible for freeing the slaves. So here he is, and he is born into slavery, basically. Now, there had been a prophecy, a prediction, astrologers had predicted that on the day that Moses was actually born, that there would be a deliverer would be born that day. And this deliverer would free the slaves from the Egyptians. Now, out of fear and out of response to that, the Pharaoh then had all the Hebrew babies that had been born that day killed. Now, Moses was a special baby. Not only did his mother not want to give up her child and lose her baby, not only that, but she felt that there was something very special about him. On the day that he was born, it is said that the house was just filled with light. And you'll find that this light is a recurring theme throughout the story of Moses. The room was full of light when he was born. People said that they saw the light of God coming from his face when he came down from the mountain with the 10 commandments. And there's the burning bush. So there's always this like thing about light that's happening. Now, metaphysically, A Course in Miracles would tell us that light represents spiritual understanding. So it's fair to assume that Moses was born with a spiritual understanding. Now, his mother hid him for 3 days. And after she realized that she couldn't hide him any longer, she decided to put him in a waterproof basket and send him, made of reeds, and send him along the banks of the Nile River. So Moses floats down, baby Moses, through down the Nile River, and then eventually is rescued by the Pharaoh's daughter. So she's unable to nurse him, and so she hires a Hebrew woman to do this for her. This woman happens to be Moses' mother. So I find that very fascinating that, you know, here she is afraid of losing her child, and then he ends up having two incredible women as mothers and living a life of privilege. Now, after he was weaned, the Pharaoh's daughter raised him in the palace surrounded by all the luxuries of Egypt. So at this point, he's kind of similar to Buddha, right? Buddha grew up in a palace. He grew up with all the luxuries. He grew up as a prince. Buddha had everything that he could possibly have needed. So Moses, you know, despite being a Hebrew slave, gets that same type of advantaged life. So he grew up in the palace. Now, I've read that he knew he was Hebrew. I've read he didn't know he was Hebrew. I watched the 10 Commandments over the weekend. Forgot how sexy they made Moses in that. And I'm watching that over the weekend, and he doesn't know he's Hebrew, which was very interesting because it creates a type of identity crisis for him. And there's a point later on where Pharaoh says to him, are you Hebrew or are you Egyptian? And his answer to that is, I am Moses. So it's a very interesting thing because this is a recurring thing you'll find with characters of this type of archetype. You'll find this with Moses. You'll find this with Superman, right? Superman doesn't know if he is Kryptonian or if he's a boy from Kansas. So it creates this type of identity crisis. And metaphysically, this speaks to the part of us where we are confused in our minds about whether or not we are the love that lives within us or if we are the fear that lives within us. So Moses grows up, and eventually one day he sees a Hebrew slave being beaten. It says in the Bible, looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Now, this was not a great cover up because this was uncovered the next day. Now, Moses was really afraid. And I just want to point out, it's really interesting here. Later, as we go over the 10 Commandments, we know that one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not commit murder. And here this guy is committing murder. Now, you can argue that it was justifiable because this Egyptian was most likely, possibly about to kill this Hebrew slave. But it's just a very interesting thing here. And what also is very interesting about it is, like, we also know that Moses had a speech impediment. So there's some like challenges that Moses has that in a way doesn't make him the ideal vessel. And yet throughout all of these biblical stories, we find that God can use anyone for his purposes. So Moses is afraid and he didn't know how to deal with fear. So Pharaoh went and, excuse me, we know we deal with fear, but so did Moses. So Pharaoh found out that Moses had done and tried to kill him. Moses runs for his life. He lives out in the desert in Midian for 40 years, gets married, and has a child. So fear shows up again when God appeared to him in flames from within a bush. Moses saw through the bush Moses thought that the bush was on fire and it did not burn up. So here's what's interesting, okay? So he murders this Egyptian slave, or this Egyptian slave owner, flees to Midian, where he goes and has a life, gets married, and has children. Then one day, he is walking out in nature. He's out in the field. He sees a burning bush, and God speaks to him. Now, this is not too different than you and I. The Bible just happens to use some very colorful language. And it has to, how else would these stories live on and on and on if they weren't like built up to like mythical proportions? But I want you to think about this for a moment. Those of you watching this who are into spirituality probably have had experiences where you're walking out in nature, maybe not in Arizona lately, but you're walking out in nature, and in the serenity of it and of the calmness of it, you have an epiphany. How many times has that happened to you? And we know the spiritual awakening happens for us one epiphany after another. So there Moses is. There's the burning bush, and God speaks to him. And God tells him that he wants him to go rescue the Hebrews from Egypt. Now, Moses, once again, is afraid, and he gives excuse after excuse to God on why he shouldn't choose him. And part of that being that he stutters. Moses tells God, please send someone else. And God didn't want to send someone else, and he did get angry with Moses. So he says to him, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? Now, God rebukes him first and foremost for doubting his choice of Moses as a vessel. On top of that, he gives him the staff, his rod, to provide him wondrous powers to achieve his goal. And then also because Moses wasn't eloquent in how he spoke and he did stutter, he gave him his brother to be his mouthpiece throughout his journey. Now, it's interesting, this whole part of Moses's journey. Now, if you are familiar with mythology and the archetypes of the hero's journey, this is very common that the hero refuses the call. If you think back to Star Wars, when Luke first learns of his Jedi nature and has this opportunity to go on this grand adventure, he says no, right? And this is very common. Superman has his experiences where he hears the call and he refuses. And we make excuses for ourselves. We don't think we're very special. We don't think we're very different. But what A Course in Miracles would ask us is, do you really think that God would give you an assignment and a purpose, place something before you and say for you to go do this, and not give you what was necessary for the trip? Not give you the staff, not give you the mouthpiece, not provide the money, not provide the way, not provide the connections? Do you really think that God is going to say to you, hey, this is what I want you to do, and not provide for it? But this is type of like human nature, human habit to refuse this call. Now, Moses turns out to be a courageous leader. He does overcome his own fears. He recruits his brother Aaron to help him, promising to help him both. Moses did rise to the challenge, and through the long story of the 10 plagues and the Pharaoh's opposition, he does lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. The movie is just so beautiful. I love it. It's just so much fun. It's exciting. But the scene where the Nile River turns to blood, frogs land, there's lice, and eventually there's the death of the Pharaoh's son. And I remember watching this movie as a kid and just thinking, wow, God is sick and twisted. I remember thinking that. I'm like, this Christian God is sick and twisted. But as you get older and you start learning more about metaphysics and like looking deeper into these stories, you see that these stories aren't so much about people outside of us, but these are about the inner workings of our own mind. So in this story, the Pharaoh represents the ego mind. And in this story, Moses represents the part of our mind, the aspect of our consciousness that listens to God. And so these 10 plagues come. And what these 10 plagues really represent is how when we actually have a quote for you guys. Let's see. So Moses reflects the psychic journey of every soul. Each of us is born of God, then wanders into the slavery of ego consciousness, and is ultimately guided by the voice of God to travel to the promised land and take our brothers and sisters with us. I love that. That's from Marianne Williamson's book, From Triumph to Tears. or from Tears to Triumph. And so in this story, you are the Moses, but you are also the Pharaoh. And in your mind, you are enslaved to the Pharaoh. So think about these 10 plagues as you would think about what happens when we have become slaves to our ego thinking, when we've become slaves to insecurity, when we are slaves to worry, when we are slaves to doubt, when we are slaves to all of that stuff. Think about somebody with a drug addiction, for example. If somebody is enslaved to a drug addiction, what they're going to experience in their life is something very much like the 10 plagues. They lose their self-respect. They lose their friends. They lose their money. They lose their loved ones. They may lose their family. All those same 10 plagues that the Pharaoh suffered were his own choice. There's a scene in the movie where 9 of the 10 plagues have come, and Pharaoh is arguing with Moses, and Moses says to Pharaoh, the 10th plague will be your choice. It will be your decision, Pharaoh. And Moses leaves, and the Pharaoh says, fine, then it will be the firstborn child of the Hebrews. That is who I will take. And because of that, the first child of Egypt was taken, and the Pharaoh lost his own son through his own actions and behaviors. Now, the story goes on, and we're trapped between the Pharaoh, who changed his mind and pursued the newly freed slaves, and the Red Sea. Moses tells the people, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. He then prophesies that the Egyptians you see today will never see you again. And he was right. Moses leads them through the Red Sea on dry ground by the power of God. And that was just the beginning of Moses' courageous leadership. Now, we know that he was very close to God. The job called Moses to do was full of difficulties and challenges. Moses never hid his emotions and questions from God. In fact, he spent a lot of time with God. Now, what's interesting is they spent 40 days together on the top of Mount Sinai, where Moses receives the 10 commandments. The Jews also wandered through the desert for 40 years. I remember when I was watching the movie last week, I was just thinking, I was just in Israel, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't take 40 years to get from Egypt to Israel or wherever they were going. But then I remembered while I was over in Israel, we learned that the word for many days and the word for the word 40 are actually identical words. It's the same thing. So a lot of times in the Bible, when we hear it was 40 days and 40 nights, it just means it was many days and it was many nights. So I'm sure you know the story. Moses goes up to the mountain. He gets the 10 commandments. He comes down and he finds that people had gotten tired of waiting on him, and they'd made the golden calf, right? They melted down all their gold and they had made this beautiful golden calf to make an idol. And they start partying and, doing their debauchery. And then Moses comes down and sees this. Now, God wants to smite these people. And Moses is like, no. And it's really cool the way he disagrees with his God very often and says, do not do that. He wants a chance to help them. And so he asks God to be gracious, and then he delivers the 10 commandments. And then for 40 years, he leads the Hebrews in search of the promised land. Moses doesn't actually make it to the promised land. He gets really close and it's in sight. And then he passes away and is buried by God. Now, I wish we had more time to go into more of this story. I just think there's just so much here to dive into. If you're interested more in the metaphysics of it, definitely read this Marianne Williamson book, Tears to Triumph. Just a great book. But what I want to go into next is I want to repeat to you that Marianne Williamson quote I shared earlier. So Moses reflects the psychic journey of every soul. Each of us is born of God, then wanders into the slavery of ego consciousness, and is ultimately guided by the voice of God to travel to the promised land and take our brothers and sisters with us. Now, Moses is just like Buddha and the Prophet Muhammad, leaves us with some something to guide us, right? So as we learn next week, we'll talk about the Prophet Muhammad, and he gave to the Muslims the 5 pillars of faith. Buddha gave to his followers the Eightfold Path, and Moses gave us the 10 Commandments. Now, the 10 Commandments just seem so obvious, right? When we sit down and we actually look at them. So we're going to go over them now with a little bit of this time we have left. And cool, sorry. We're going to take a moment and take a look at the 10 Commandments and how we can apply these to our lives in a different way. Now, the reason I want to look at this is, number one, this is the teaching that he left for his people. Number two, there's this scene in the movie and this quote in the Bible where Moses very fiercely says to people, there is no freedom without the law. There is no freedom without the law. So if you're somebody watching and you're wanting to experience more freedom in your life, it's very interesting that by following the 10 Commandments in a deeper level, we can actually experience more freedom in our life. So let's take a look at the first commandment. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. I remember as a kid thinking that just meant God didn't want us worshiping many gods like the pagans, like the Egyptians. When you take a deeper look at it, and you look at it through the lens of A Course in Miracles, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me, really means that you shall place nothing before love. Love will come first. There won't be anything else. Don't put money above love. Put nothing above love. Make love the number one thing. The second commandment, you shall not make for yourself a carved image. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. So this kind of builds on the same idea of not having other gods by not having any idols. So think about it for a moment. You in your life, is there a place where you're not at peace? Is there a place where you're struggling? And in that same place where you're not at peace, have you placed something above God, above love? Have you placed money above love? Have you placed a specific relationship above love? Have you placed money, I already said that. Have you placed your job or something else? What have you placed above love and above God? And I promise you, if you'll take a look at the areas in your life where you're not at peace, you're not in peace in those areas because there is something that you're giving more power and more importance than you are giving love. The third one is, you shall not take the Lord your God, the name of the Lord your God in vain. So this is interesting. We think that language doesn't matter in our culture, and we think that we can be very careless in how we talk to one another. But the thing is, words can be very destructive and they can be very hurtful. So just like in Buddhism, when it challenges us to use right speech, the 10 Commandments is doing the same thing, that we speak lovingly, not just about God, but lovingly of one another. The fourth commandment is to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. So I've got a quote I'm going to read to you from Marianne Williamson regarding this commandment. Your nervous system can only take so much. You're not a human doing, you're a human being. All this rush, 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 work, 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 gotta go is destroying your adrenal glands, leaching the juice out of your life force, and making you make dumb decisions that affect your life and the lives of others. One day a week, just one day, make your Sabbath about important things, deep things, loving things. Regroup, turn within, and recalibrate your energies to align with God. The other 6 days, a bit of time each day is good, but on the Sabbath, give God the whole thing. You'll live longer, be healthier, and be happier if you do. Now, the fifth one is honor your father and honor your mother. I struggled with that one when I was a kid. Honor your mother and honor your father. And I just remember, because my dad would always tell me to respect my elders, and I would look around and be like, yeah, but elders can be so stupid, is what I would always think. I later learned in life, and I'm sure you've all learned this by now, it's not just about loving and honoring your parents, but it's being at peace with who they are and being at peace with your childhood and not fighting, trying to change that. You know, if you don't figure out your childhood drama and your childhood trauma, that's going to hinder you. So earlier I said, Moses said that that there is no freedom without the law. There is no freedom if you're still hung up on your childhood trauma and drama. If you have not healed that to the best of your ability, it's going to hinder your ability to be free right here, right now, and your next relationship, and your next employment opportunity, and your next friendship, and your next love relationship, whatever it might be. Number 6, you shall not murder. Hard to believe we still need to hear this one, but we still live in a country that murders. You know, we murder animals, we fund wars that murder other people. This one I have to sit with more, because on one hand, I can definitely say I've never murdered anyone. I do eat animals, and I found myself thinking this past week, in what ways do I contribute to companies without even knowing that are in fact out there hurting other people. So that's one I need to sit with more, and I encourage you to do the same. Just take a good look at your life. Are there ways that the money that you donate, the way you spend money on things, are those companies and people contributing to hurting other people? The next one is you shall not commit adultery. You know, that one's interesting. I'm just going to read to you what Marianne had to say about it. She says it's time to admit that over-casualizing sex is harmful to yourself and to others. Sex is one of the most powerful forces in the universe, one that can heal and one that can harm. You go messing around with that energy, someone somewhere is bound to get hurt, and it might be you. If sex doesn't stem from a sacred commitment, then it doesn't stem from God. Whether the commitment was yours or someone else's, it is yours to honor. Number 8, you shall not steal. Once again, just amazing that we need to be reminded of this, but we should not steal. And maybe you and I as individuals are not stealing, but what about the nations and the corporations that are all out there stealing today? Number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. This one goes back to, once again, that words have power. So don't gossip, don't slander, don't hate speech. This goes down to not lying as well. So thou shalt not lie. I want to talk about that for a second. So I think at this point, I'm going to assume for most of us here watching this morning that we're not out there lying to people, or at least I hope not. But here's where I find that I'm guilty, is that I don't necessarily lie to people, but I won't be as honest as I could be. And that's usually for me, it's about, I won't be as honest as I could be about my feelings, about my emotions, and about my thoughts. And I find myself doing that as a defense mechanism, that I just don't want to be that open with somebody very often. There's a Lauryn Hill song where she sings, how's it go? Everyday people, they will lie to themselves, they will lie to you, and they will lie to God. And I think that's, like, for me, the metaphysical direction to take with thou shalt not lie is, am I sober-minded enough that I even know the truth of what's going on with me, that I even know the truth of this situation? Am I sober-minded enough that I even know that I can know that I'm not lying to people? So that's another one. I invite you to come back to this and review this stuff throughout the week. And last but not least, you shall not covet. So here's the thing. God made the universe infinitely abundant. You don't need to be jealous or envious of what someone else has, because God has given the same things to all of us. And so again, the 10 commandments are just reminding us right then, right there, there's nothing your neighbor has that you don't have on a spiritual basis and that you can't achieve in your life. So I really love the story of Moses. I wish we had more time to talk more about it. And I strongly encourage you, if you have the chance and you have 3.5 hours, to rewatch the 1956 film. They've remastered it, and it was just an incredible journey, learning more about Moses, taking a deeper dive into the 10 commandments and realizing that the 10 commandments are so similar to the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. There is only one God, and there's many paths to him. And along the path and along the journey from fear to love, you're going to find that everybody learns the same things. As you and I are learning to turn away from our ego and towards our soul, you must at some point learn how important right speech is. You must at some point learn that it does you no good to envy what other people have. At some point you learn that when you give anything more importance than love and God and healing and all the great things that should be important in your life, when you put things above that it causes you pain and it causes you suffering. One of the things I really like about the story of Moses is the emphasis on idolatry. And we'll find that's the same thing with Buddha, that's the same thing with Muhammad, that's the same thing with Jesus, is that when we make for ourselves idols, when we decide that this person or sex or drugs or this job or this certain bank account balance, whatever it is, when we place those things and make them more important than anything else, we harm ourselves and we harm other people. Now, the other great thing I love about the story of Moses is that he is just like you and I. And he's just like you and I in the sense that he had an exodus, right? His job was to lead the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt to the promised land. He represents a very powerful archetype. You'll find his type of character. I mentioned Luke Skywalker earlier, but you also find that he's very similar to like the wizard that you might see in like a Harry Potter movie, this wise person that is guiding the younger people from fear to love, from Egypt to the promised land. And the way that he's just like you and I, though, is that he didn't feel he was the best to answer that call. A Course in Miracles reminds us that every single one of us are called, very few choose to listen. Now, Moses, when he got the call that he was supposed to take the Hebrews out of Egypt into the promised land, he said no. He's like, no, why me? He's like, I got a speech impediment. There's nothing special about me. Like, please choose someone else. Just like Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane, was take this from me, give this to someone else. And God came back at him with, how are you doubting my choice for you? And why are you doubting that I would give you what you need for this journey? So I ask you, as you go into this week, to take a look at your personal exodus, to take a look at your own journey from fear to love, your own journey out of your suffering. And I ask you, are you listening? Are you spending time in meditation? Are you spending time in prayer out in nature? Are you quieting your mind so that you can hear the voice for God speaking to you? Because the voice for God doesn't just tell you that you are love and you are perfection and you are peace and you are all those wonderful things that are true. It's also giving you direction. It's telling you where to go. It's telling you who to be. It's telling you what to say, and it's telling you to whom to say it. And that is happening at all times. I think of God a lot like a song. It is a song that is playing throughout the entire cosmos 24/7. And either you're tuned into it and you're listening to it, or you're not. And if you're not, it's probably because your life is too noisy and you're too distracted. But if you will listen to that, if you will relax your mind, relax your heart, go into your meditation, do your serious spiritual practices, that voice will remind you who you are. It will remind you of why you're here, and it will tell you so clearly what to do, and it will pave that way for you, just as it did for Moses. Now, we're going to go ahead and with that, take that into our morning prayer. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes and let's just turn within. So, dear God, I recognize this morning how powerful you are. Your infinite wisdom, your infinite peace, your infinite joy, that you exist deep within every sentient being, every man, every woman, every child, every creature, that you exist within them as the perfection of their soul. And dear God, knowing this about everyone listening this morning, I also know that there are people suffering. I know that are those of us that are on our journey from fear to love, and along the way, there can be heartache, there can be feeling broke and broken, there can be a shortage of money, of job, career, relationships, divorces, grieving, all kinds of stuff, dear God, that we know that happens in our lives. And dear God, in this moment, we hand this over to you. We know that your power moving through our minds and our hearts knows what to do and who to be in these situations. So I pray for anybody listening today, going through anything challenging, that a miracle is upon them, that a shift in perception from fear to love is happening right now, and that any miracle that needs to happen in their physical world also is happening right now. That, dear God, you are making the way for a life of peace, a life of joy, a life of power, a life of clarity for everyone listening this morning. And dear God, I know that through this personal awakening that everyone is experiencing, how that has such a big impact on the world all around us. And ultimately, each one of us unite together, take the hands of our brothers and sisters, and march from the slavery of the ego mind, from the slavery of Pharaoh, towards the promised land of love, peace, and divine perfection, knowing full well, dear God, that you are with us every step of the way. And together we say, Amen. So thank you for joining us this morning. Just a quick reminder for anybody, whoops, wrong one. Man, technology this morning for me. Okay. Just a quick reminder for any of you who might need a little extra spiritual guidance this week. We do have prayer support on our website, so you can head over there and request prayer, and we'll pray for you for the next 30 days. We've also got 2 classes on our website that you can sign up for, a spiritual awakening class and a healing of the inner child class. And then also, we do have our counseling on our website as well. And then also our weekly discussion group. So we'll be getting together this Tuesday at 6 o'clock again. You should be receiving emails letting you know about that and what we'll be reading and going over, and how to join the weekly study group as well. You can also find us on social media. Well, obviously, if you're watching, you're on social media, but be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. There's probably somebody on your timeline today who needed to hear this talk or a talk like this. So be sure to share it so that they can hear the message as well. And last but not least, 2 quick things. Next Sunday, we're going to be talking about the life of Muhammad. Super excited to talk to you guys about this. Here in America, we're not as familiar with Islam and Muhammad as I believe that we should be. Not that you need to convert into Islam, but the better we understand Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam, and all these different faiths, and even non-faiths, the more we understand them, the more we're going to understand our brothers and sisters. And that is always a great thing, the more we can understand one another. Now, as you guys know, our spiritual center relies entirely on your generous donations. So if you feel so called, if you feel served by today's message and you want to donate financially, you can go over to PayPal and type in @LoveIsGreaterCenter. I'll post the link in the comments below here shortly. @LoveIsGreaterCenter. Your financial contributions go to a variety of things. It helps us with the website. It helps us with the streaming softwares. It helps us with our nonprofit status. It also helps us with just a variety of things that it takes to get the center going. And also, it's going to help us in securing we're going to do a live event probably around Christmas. And so your donations are also helping us get that together so we can rent a venue, get together and do some type of Christmas service. But more information on that is coming. So again, if you do feel that you've been very served by today's talk, you can make a donation on PayPal @LoveIsGreaterCenter. So Y'all have been awesome. I will see you next Sunday for our talk on the Prophet Muhammad. In the meantime, be sure to love one another, spend some time in meditation, and keep your eyes out for those miracles. I will see you next Sunday. Bye.